our thing, our hashtag, our brand, whatever you want to call it. Our culture is centered on toughness, discipline, and grit. The one thing that's funny about it is you're not really going to hear the words toughness, discipline, or grit a whole lot when you actually come to our practices, and it's because of the way we define it. And so, very simply, toughness is, we tell our kids, is the ability to hear and tell the truth. Discipline is finding the details and taking care of them regardless of the circumstance or your comfort level. And grit is, about being a man and fulfilling all your responsibilities, again, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of what you've got going on.
Welcome to the JAMODI Podcast. Today we're joined by the head boys basketball coach at Prosper Walnut Grove High School, Jake Garner. A native of Tom Bean, Coach Garner grew up playing high school basketball before continuing his education at University of North Texas. He has spent all 12 years of his coaching career in Prosper ISD. Coach Garner began with 3 years at the middle school level before moving on to Prosper High School, where he served 4 years as an assistant in both football and basketball, followed by 2 years as the varsity assistant. He then took on the challenge of opening Walnut Grove High School as the head coach, building the program from the ground up. In just 3 seasons, he has led Walnut Grove to a 74-29 record, playoff appearances every year as a new school, and back-to-back by-district championships. Before you hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at JAMODI Podcast. Coaches and athletic directors, Scoreboard Media is partnering with schools across the country to upgrade facilities, increase funding, and create meaningful student engagement through fully funded LED digital scoreboards. Now with custom score tables installed in just weeks, you can elevate your gym even faster at no cost. With a fully managed sponsorship program, your school receives consistent funding that goes directly to your students and programs. The result? Upgraded facilities, stronger school pride, and deeper connections with your community. Powered by Scoreboard Media. Email info@scoreboardmedia.com to get started.
Coach, how are you?
Oh, I can't complain. How about you?
Not much. Just trying to get ready for playoffs and finish this thing out strong.
Man, that's good. That's good. Well, I want to first thank you so much for coming on here, giving up your time, talking hoops.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do with getting to do this is to get to know other high school coaches. And so this is just an honor for me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I got to say I'm starstruck being on here with you. Been listening to the podcast and everything for a while, and so I'm super excited and really thankful for you and all you do for the coaching community and having me on for sure.
Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully don't disappoint you at all during this time that we have together. But I do love just the profession so much. It was kind of, and basketball, probably you feel the same way. Basketball has just been so good to me since I was 9 years old. I mean, I tell my guys all the time, like I've been a part of a team since I was 9. Playing wise and then now coaching, and can't imagine just doing anything else, even though there's times throughout the year, I'm sure you feel the same, where maybe you could picture doing something else, but at the end of the day, it's just awesome to get to do what we get to do. And I love getting to give back a little bit to the profession that's been so good to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've talked to a couple kids in different times throughout the last few years I think the hardest time for me, going through college, I didn't play college basketball. One of the toughest times for me was the time I got done playing in my senior year of high school. And then from that time to when I became a coach officially, I had great friends. I had a great college experience, but it was still tough just not truly being on that team and being part of a program or those different things. And so, while there's plenty of things that make this job really, really tough, I cannot imagine myself doing anything else because this is all I've ever imagined myself doing. This is all I've, since I was a little kid, just because I was lucky enough to have coaches that made an impact on me very early on. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And, a little bit different format now that I was doing the first few years. I used to, and now maybe this would maybe make sense, thinking about how some episodes used to go where it seemed like we were having this talk months and months and months before when it's actually coming out. Maybe there was a reference to a time period or something happening, in basketball or somewhere. But I used to kind of record twice a year just in big batches, where it'd be all in the fall. I do 6 months worth of talks and then all in the spring in a month. And that was good for me, but it wasn't always good for the talks because times change, not with me and you and our teams, not necessarily what's from the past or what we're looking forward to in the future. And so you and I are at very different points in our seasons where an hour and a half ago, I finished my last practice with this group, and we play our final game tomorrow night. And then it's gear up, taking a little break, and then getting back at it, where you're in that other realm of, okay, we finished that quarter of the season, and now we're into the final quarter where we're planning on making a deep run. All that to say, whether you're finishing a season like me or in one like you or that you've had the last few years, it's still amazing to get to do what we get to do. And a question I have is, so you played high school basketball, then you went to college, but didn't play. Just because you played college basketball doesn't mean you're a good coach or can coach. And sometimes you could argue the opposite. And then how did you get into it? What led you back to basketball?
Yeah, so I like everybody. I feel like you have that coach that made an impact on you. And so I grew up in a very small town called Tom Bean, Texas. There's less than 1,000 people. Graduated with in my high school. There was like 300 people my senior year, but I had a coach and from 7th grade, and he was actually my 6th grade PE teacher, Chad Ashlock. I mean, I had him from 6th grade all the way through 12th grade being a part of playing football and playing basketball. We actually had, in those 6 years of being in middle school and high school, had a ton of different ADs, head football coaches, but the one constant was Coach Ashlock. And he was always there. But the biggest thing for me is I was lucky to have really good parents, and every day they dropped me off, Coach Ashlock was an extension of them. And so whatever I got from my dad, who was really hard on me, or whatever I got from my mom, who was so supportive, I always got from my coaches. And while I had a lot of different coaches or coaching staffs, I had all those coaches that made an impact on me. And I just couldn't see myself doing anything different. I was a reasonable kid, so I figured out by about 8th grade I wasn't gonna be going to the NBA, but I loved what I did. I kind of had the unique experience of going into it with the high school experience, honestly, looking at it from a coach's perspective. So played 4 years of varsity basketball, obviously being in a small town, 3 years of varsity football. And I just found that my most enjoyable times were talking about things with our coaches, and, during lunch or, on Saturdays when they were game planning, sneaking into the coach's office with them. And I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so when I went into college, my college experience was, I want to get done with this as quickly as possible. And I want to be an offensive coordinator in football, and I want to be a head basketball coach. And so that's what I wanted to do. I went to the University of North Texas because my best friend from high school wanted to go there, and he was a year younger than me. And so I waited. I went to Collin for a year, and I immediately started just volunteering for my high school. And so I coached spring league. I coached summer league. I was going to scout for football on Friday nights and going all over North Texas. And so I just already was trying to do everything I could. And then I was lucky enough to get my student teaching at Prosper ISD. University of North Texas just placed me there, and I had like 3 school districts that I could choose from, and that was the closest one to where I grew up, and I wanted to live at home and save some money. And so I was, again, like super blessed and fortunate throughout this whole thing, and super lucky. Like, I realized that I walked in to find my mentor teacher at Prosper High, and it was a guy named John Lewis. And first off, it was complete culture shock to go to a place like Prosper High, coming from a small town like I'm from. The secretary was like, "Hey, you're going to go upstairs, and it's going to be the 3rd hallway on your right." And I'm like, my high school had 2 hallways and definitely didn't have an upstairs. And so, so I met him, and come to find out he was the varsity assistant basketball coach at Prosper High. And I already knew my second thing I wanted to do after finding my mentor teacher was find the head basketball coach, who I actually knew, not personally, but I knew who he was. And that was Jonathan Ellis. And he was at Melissa when I was in high school, and he opened up Melissa. And so I wanted to find him. And so when I met my mentor teacher, Coach Lewis, he just said, "Hey, man, I don't know if this is going to work because I don't teach that many classes. Like, I'm a coach." And I was like, "Well, I want to coach." And he said, "Well, what do you want to coach?" I said, "Basketball." He's like, "Oh, perfect." And so I just got involved with them. And I think the biggest thing for me was I treated every single day like an interview. I didn't think I was going to be lucky enough to work in a place like Prosper. And so I was just working for references, and come to find out, after going throughout that process of basically working with those guys for a year, I got into one of our middle schools. And so I've gone from student teacher to middle school coach to high school coach, and was blessed enough to open up Walnut Grove here in Prosper ISD.
Man, that's big time. That's a cool story too, just the way that some of those relationships work. And definitely know Coach Ellis really well from my time up in McKinney and in
Right.
that area. Also, I just want talking with Wes Watson yesterday for a long time. He had the best things to say about you and your
Yeah.
team. Said you're really
Appreciate it.
hard to prepare for, and then offensively you do some good stuff. And so, any praise from the Wes Watson. I
Yeah.
mean, you're doing something well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm that's another thing I've been blessed with is year 3 now, going against guys like Wes, Daryl Kraft, and, a lot of some younger guys too with, Justin Kaufman was at Centennial my first year, Bruce Wright, who's at Liberty now, like, just huge coach. Coach Pfeiffer, who I think is like at Anna, is just a phenomenal coach, and enough people don't talk about him, the way that he's ran
Yep.
that thing and just continues to be super competitive as his town changes and grows and all those things. And so, yeah, I've been super blessed by that. But yeah, no, Coach Wes has made it really hard the last couple of years. But yeah, he's fun to go against. It's just not always gone our way the last couple of years. So we got him once though last year.
He said something earlier about the coach being an extension of the parents and
Uh,
how that's kind of how your family viewed it. My family viewed it the same way. I was taught at a young age to trust my coaches and trust what they said and follow that plan and kind of took that for me all the way up through college. And I'm not saying that it's different now, but I watched listened to an interview months ago on Craig Groeschel's leadership podcast where he talked about how today's youth or teenagers, they don't trust first, they distrust first. And then you have to earn that trust or show it over time. Maybe there's something to that. My question was going to be as coaches, how can we create or foster that type of relationship where it's us partnering with our parents, not at odds with them? They're allies, they're not enemies. Do you do anything specific there?
yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I do, and it's not, I guess maybe traditional, maybe people think I'm crazy, but maybe it's the small town in me, I don't know. But the first thing I did this year in my student or in my parent meeting was the first slide that I had was my phone number, and said you can call me, you can text me. The number one thing I care about is the experience of your son in my program. And, I talked to a parent recently and said, I have 12 young men that are a part of my varsity team. I have X amount in my entire program. I have that many families that I'm also in charge of, not just that young man. And so the number one thing is the experience of your son in my program. But as a parent, I'm also a parent. My daughter's only 5, but I can empathize with what that looks like. And I really want to make sure that they're getting the best possible experience that they can. And, sometimes that's tough when it comes to playing time and role and all those different things. And so I think that's number one is trying to build that relationship with the parents to know that they can reach out. And one of the things I tell them though is you can't ride the roller coaster of the season. Like your kid's going to do that naturally. They're a teenager. Like they're going to feel the ups and the downs. But what I need to know is if we're in a down point in the season too long, then that's the time to reach out. But it can't be just every little up and down, every little tiny piece of
Yeah.
adversity that's where
Yeah.
you're reaching out because 10 minutes later, you're going to feel better about it once they feel better about it. So I think that's one thing. And then I just, constantly just trying to get in front of those parents and make those connections with them, which can be hard during the season. I know this year we did a mom's clinic and that was huge. It was I'd always been wanting to do one. Talked to Coach Pfeiffer actually about that. I know that he did one on this podcast. I listened to him talk about that. And so I had a mom ask me about it and said, I don't know when we can fit it in. And she found a Saturday and she put it together. And I have a phenomenal booster club. And so they were able to put all that stuff together. And yeah, we had a great time and it was awesome just to see them interact with their sons and then be able to spend that time with them as well. And so I think the as many things as you can do like that to just open yourself up. One of the things I try to do is make it very apparent that I have a family and they're a part of this thing as well. And I think that builds some empathy, builds some bridges that they understand that you're a parent. When they see my family, my parents come to every single game along with my wife and my daughter. I think it's important for them to see that because we can really forget those things. It's very easy for me to forget that they not only did they have the son that's playing for me, but they've got 2, 3, 4 other kids that they're trying to provide for. And it goes the other way as well, where, I think when they see that I care about my family and that they're a priority for me, that's going to make their son a priority in our program as well.
A couple really good things there. I love the phone number idea, and I don't know if I did that this year. My first year at Midway, had a parent meeting, and so I like that idea of just that level of access or transparency, but then I would imagine you also have to set up the guardrails with that though too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, the 24-hour rule, you have my number. You're not calling me right after. Don't text me right after. Get some time. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're always going to have some of those that'll fire off that text, and it's not the 24-hour rule, and I think our school district does a really good job of trying to put up those safeguards in general. You can sit there and say all day, we're never going to talk about playing time. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to call a meeting and say it's about X, but we know what it's actually
That's
about.
right.
We're going to find our
They're
way to
really
it.
good at the weave
Yes,
it back into that. And so that's to
absolutely.
your point. Years ago, I just stopped fighting that and said, we can talk about it. We can
Yep.
have an honest conversation about it. I like for the player to be there so that all the stakeholders are
Yeah.
there. But yeah,
Yeah, I think that's one thing I could kind of do a better job of, honestly, is I try to give grace to the parents where they'll want to reach out and say, because number one, I say, we're fine. You want to talk about playing time? Let's talk about playing time. You want to talk about shots? You want to talk about all that type of stuff? We'll talk about it. But I try to give grace to the parents. And when they say, hey, we don't want them to be a part of this, and I'm going to, what I try to do is give them that opportunity, but also say, okay, if we're meeting right now, we're trying to find a solution. We're now going to bring your son into the solution. So I'm now going to bring him in and tell him that we talk. So either way, he's going to find out. But yeah, I think that's the thing is you do have to set up those guardrails. You do have to make sure that they know when they can and when not to. But I'll say this, year one, that I told them all at the parent meeting, I said, hey, look, like your son has my number. If you want my number, I know you're going to get it. So just ask him for it. Year two, last year, we had a ton. I had a ton of parent contact, a ton of parent emails. We had a high expectation because we got everybody back from year one and had a very successful year one for being a brand new school. And so I kind of took that, and I'm pretty good about documenting things. And I don't remember what the number is, but that was part of my point in giving them my cell phone number this year and just putting it on that first slide. Was I had way too many parents reach out after losses. I put on there the average that we had on parent meetings or contacts after losses, but then I had also how many we had after wins, and we won 28 games. So it was kind of, this ratio is not real good here, guys. But we only lost 10 games. And so I think that was my point this year, is like, you can't ride the wave. And so this was the first year that I was very, very intentional with saying, here's my number. And it was freshman, JV, varsity parents there. And I've had the least amount of parent contacts. And I think that's just because I set the standard of, like, if you're going to reach out, like, number one, make sure that you've thought about this before you reach out. And number two, once you do, understand that, like, I'm going to tell you the truth. We're going to be honest. We're going to find a solution to everything, but don't do it in haste. Don't fire it off just because, you're upset and you're emotional. But if your son is going through something, I need to know. And so I want them to have that freedom to be able to feel like they can reach out. And so our parents have been great. Our parents are super supportive. And so it's been an improvement in year two, but I also think some of that in year three, it's been an improvement. But some of that in year two was just familiarity, because I know some of these parents for years back in my time at Prosper High when I was there as well.
it's an interesting point that maybe the better you know them, the more access they feel like they have.
Yeah.
That's been very different for me coming in, not really knowing anybody here. Like you made a comment about how it's harder in season to build those relationships. Yeah, that I feel like I've been getting to know the players. I haven't been able to get to know the parents very well, but at the same time, I haven't created avenues for that to happen, because even the way that your arena is set up can sometimes dictate whether or not you have a lot of crossover. Our floor is down, and it's not like there's not bleachers on the floor, but it's about 6 feet of concrete up, and then a little bit of a railing, but it's enough, and there's no way to come down. So
Right.
there's no crossover. So I haven't had that normal after games fist bump, see got this and that. So I think things like your mom's clinic that you do, I know Wes and Kyle at Lovejoy, Wes is doing it now, does overnight trip with the
Right.
dads. I
Yep.
think things that you can do. I got to get more creative with getting our parents together, get them getting to know my wife and I, and knowing each other. And then there's ways too in those mom's clinic or those trips with parents that you can kind of throw some nuggets out there that may help them. Like you said, can't jump on the roller coaster of a
Yeah.
season with your kid because there's ups and downs. Like, man, letting them know those things, know your expectations, get to know you a little bit better. I think that can help.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I definitely I'm right there with you. I could do a better job of trying to find those times. I get so locked into how much time I spend with the kids, and our kids are great.
Yeah.
They come up and they're constantly working, and you can have the best relationship with them, but at the end of the day, that parent's always either dropping off their kid or telling them bye when they leave, and they're in your hands, and they can always wonder, right? And so
Yep.
trying to find those other ways to have that crossover, because I get blinders on too much during the season. So you talked about like your arena set up, like even ours is very similar, but even if it wasn't, like I'm game day, I'm locked in. I'm
Yeah.
bad about that. Like, and people feel like they can't approach me. I don't have the most inviting face, to be honest with you, most of the time. And so I don't smile near enough. And so, yeah, especially if you're a new parent, like you're a freshman parent in our program, you're probably terrified. And I promise I'm not mean. I just have that face that people are like, I don't know that we should go talk to him. He looks mad right now, but that's just my face, unfortunately. So,
Just gotta change your face, coach. That's it.
yeah.
No, that's funny. I think what you're talking about is buy-in, not just buy-in from your players, but buy-in from your parents. And because you made a great comment, I'm with the players a ton. Like I'm investing in them and this and that, but we're relying on our players to when they get in that car to share all of the good stuff that we've done with them, all of the affirmations we give them, all the positivity. And I got to witness this. What changed me a lot as a coach, there's like a pre-parent version and then a post-parent version because when my older son Landon started playing select ball and I was watching other coaches and sitting in the stands and feeling that, man, should we go talk to him, feeling, that our
Yeah.
parent, I never understood or what it felt like. But the difference with, I think, select ball and school ball is, especially when they're younger, is they're driving them to practices. They're sitting there in practice and they're listening to everything. So when they're out watching a game on the weekend, they actually know a little bit of, yeah, he said that in practice. Why aren't you doing it? There's more buy-in and maybe even financial buy-in. And so how do we do that? How do we bring them in? And I think that's where I want to get more creative with not relying and going back to my son, he's at varsity practices with me. I think like all coaches, I feel like I run a good practice that is, we're moving from thing to thing. There's a ton of teaching, very little downtime, a lot of reps. And my wife asked Landon, well, how was practice today? It was good. Well, what'd you do? "Man, I don't know." And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yep.
I'm standing right there. I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, man. Like we did a lot of good stuff today. Like, what are you
Right.
talking about? But that's what that's what's happening at home. And so how do we get more buy-in? The mom's clinic, like you talked about. I've heard of some coaches bringing parents in on Saturdays for an open film session to watch the
Mhm.
game. I've always
Yeah.
said that my practices are open to parents. I had 0 parents come this year. So it's kind of one of those where I got to figure out, just going back to kind of what we said, more creative ways besides just a weekly email
Uh-huh.
to let them inside. I do think social media, coach, is a good way to
Yeah.
show them. They may not come and
Yeah.
watch, but we can show them what they're doing with clips and things. But I'm
Yeah.
always up for learning more ways.
Yeah, and I think I've kinda had that thought too, and I haven't thought about it directly like you have about, the impact that AAU and select can club, whatever you wanna call it these days, can have
Yeah.
on, they're paying the money, they're taking them, there's that car ride, there's all those things, but they are teenage boys and they do not share well. And so I know that because we try to do a really good job of meeting with our guys, right? Coach Leah Wakeland, again, his podcast with you on here about those 5-minute
Awesome.
meetings and
10-minute meetings, 10-minute
right, or
meetings.
10
That
minute
is
meetings. Yeah.
all coach. It's
Right.
changed my programs, I feel like.
Yeah. And so I think number one, I took that and I knew that was going to be something that I wanted to do. I think I got to do a better job of doing them more like the true 10-minute meetings. We try to pick our points of when we're going to meet and have a big meeting, right? But I think those guardrails go up, like you mentioned, when you have that, hey, we're going to meet, right? But I'll
Yeah.
always pull them aside, and I try to be intentional when I have a list. And like this week, I'm going to get through these guys, and they don't know we're going to meet, but we're going to actually meet. But in having those meetings, you're absolutely right. Like they're teenage boys; they don't share the best. So we've experienced that where I try to do a really good job of telling our kids the truth and setting them up to make sure that they understand like what their role is going to be on the team, what they need to work on if we're going to the off season, the different stages in the year. And what I found is those messages are not always going home, right? And so I think I've reached out to parents in the past and said, hey, this is what we specifically talked about. This is how we structured those conversations. Please talk to your son when he comes home next week when we're done with these meetings and make sure that they're talking about those things. I think one of the ways that in season or maybe in the off season is just simply film. Like, yo, those parents aren't coming in, but if your parents are anything like mine, like they'll request film because they're trying to help with their recruitment, all those types of things. So they're familiar with huddle and the idea of film and all those things. So, we film a ton of practice. I mean, every practice in the fall, every practice in the spring. And so, I think making sure that parents remember that those are open and they can see those things that we're working on and how we structure things. And we have multiple
Yeah.
gyms that we use. But I think that's one way to open your doors because they might be hesitant to come in and watch practice, but they know, I mean, it's the eye in the sky, right? Like coach is coaching and I'm not thinking about a parent watching that while I'm coaching a practice, but it's going to be on their son's huddle account and they're going to have access to it. And so I think that is one way. It's something I've always thought about. Like our parents know what we're doing in practice because they see it. Like they see it every day that we're in there in the fall and we're in there in the spring. So I do think that that's one thing that you're absolutely right about is making sure that what we do and all those things get home to the parents because it's not always relayed by their sons for sure.
Coaches, want proof your players are working? Bology tracks every shot and generates workouts on the spot. No more guesswork. Train smarter today. Download the free Bology app. One thing I love to get to do or learn about by doing this and is just what do great leaders do? What are coaches doing on a daily basis that they feel like sets them up for success? I know this time of year, I don't know if you're the same way, but I feel like I'm out of shape. I haven't been in the Word as much as I'd love to be. I'm not reading as much as I want to be. And even or spending time with my wife as much as I should be doing. Like all of these things, I feel like throughout the season become less and less. But those daily habits, Coach, what sets you up for success?
I think the first thing for me is I plan out my entire day. And so I have a planner. The big thing is I plan out my entire day and a little bit my entire week. And so going in on Sundays, that's one thing. Doesn't matter the time of year. My wife bought me one for whatever reason. She bought me like a teacher type planner. And she was like, I don't even know if you can use this, but it was kind of expensive and like it looks like a full notebook. And I actually fell in love with it. So I'm on year 5 of it. Like I have to make sure I have that thing. I bought it for my staff members. And so I kind of structure it. It's set up for like an 8-period day, what have you. And I restructure it to set up for my day because at the end of the day, we're doing a job where that bell, it ain't going to stop for your to-do list. Like we are on the schedule of of the bell schedule and all of our to-do list. And if you just look at just that to-do list in of itself, you're not going to be efficient with your time. And so I think I do a good job of not only planning it out, but also understanding that things are going to come up. Different things are going to come up in your to-do list or whatever you have planned for that day might get completely thrown off. When I first did it, I was load up and I would have every single second of every single day planned out. But then by Wednesday through Friday, it never went according to plan. So my Monday, Tuesday is pretty planned out. And then I have big things that I know I need to get done. And I know the time periods and when I can fit them in. And so I think just the time management portion is really important. But you spoke about the word and reading and writing and being intentional with your family. That's really helped me in that, in relationships of like writing down like, hey, I'm going to make sure on top of practice or anything else, I'm going to talk to these kids today. I'm going to pull them aside, or I know that they have this lunch period and they're going to be coming down the hallway. And so I'm going to talk to them then. One of the big things for me too, you talked about reading and writing. I have daily readers. And so I have a couple of books And they're right here on my desk. So I got the Daily Wisdom, Leadership Uninterrupted, and then basically a scripture book of just a daily one. And I found that it was just not nearly as daunting to say, I got to get my reading in today when it's just one page and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think what was really impactful for me is I write. I'm a big writer in the margins and highlight and try to do those things. And when it's like that 365 reader, it also has been really cool that I've been doing it depending on the book 3 to 5 years now. That day, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I can go back and read the notes that I made on that page. And it's not much, but I can remember what I was going through at that time. And so like I pick a color for a year, like this year's a blue. So I use a blue pen every day. And so I just go through and I highlight different things and that just speak to me in that time or write different things down. And so I'm reading and I'm writing all at the same time. And it'll take me sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes. But I go back to planning my day out and making sure I find that time because I just feel better after I do that, no matter what. And I'll be honest, during the season, yeah, I miss days for sure. But in the fall,
Yeah.
especially when we get started with a new school year, and in the spring, like I do a really good job, and in the summer too, I do a really good job of that. And I think the biggest portion for me is the reflection. Like this time last year, what was I going through? What was I struggling with? What was going well
Mm.
for me? Whatever. And it just makes you remember those hard times. Like you're going to get through those too. And, and the good times aren't going to last either. Like you got to remember that as well. And so that's been huge for me, this short amount of time of being a head coach and starting a program.
Questions there. First is the notebook. Do you mind sharing what kind of notebook that is that you give to your staff and everything?
Yeah, it's I gotta look at like it is. I had one teacher tell me I'm super bougie because they all had the same thing. Let's see here, Aaron Condren, and then it's I guess a teacher lesson planner. And so it's actually a lesson planner. Looks like this. And so I just divided up. It's got every day on there, including Saturday and Sunday. And it's got, it's got like different periods laid out, but I do before school, the second period of the day, our study hall, when I'm going to teach that period, my conference period, after school, and then just general notes. And so I've saved every one of them. So like sometimes I'll go back and again, I'll look at this time last year, what were we doing, whatever. And so, yeah, it's big time for me. Something simple. It just happened by
Yeah.
accident, but it's been huge for me, especially once I became a head coach of just all the things you don't want to let fall through the cracks.
Now, it's a little bit different when you move over, that chair, that 19 inches over, just the different things that you're responsible for that you really never thought about. And that's also, I think, man, as a head coach, having assistant coaches that you can delegate things to and you're letting them do some stuff, that's huge. What was the first? It was Aaron what?
Aaron Condren. So I'll spell it for you.
Spell that for me.
Condren. And there's like a ton of different stuff, like different planners and calendars and stuff like that. And there might be a better
Nice.
version of it somewhere else, but it's worked for me so far. So I keep getting the
And
same
then you
one for
said
sure.
the 360 reader. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I've got one, it's Daily Wisdom by Basketball is Psychology. And so it's a pretty common one that we got. And so I do that one and you just flip it to the date of whatever it is. Then my other one
Oh,
is
so
leadership.
you're just saying like you go through these every year and you'll be able to check the
Yeah.
notes from. Okay, that makes sense. Yep.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And so
Nice.
like I said, I've got the Kevin DeShazo one, and then a faith-based one that's just some scripture, and then just just some writing about it, and I read those. And so yeah, I do those every single day. I fall short for sure during the season, but yeah. The other one I do is 365 questions from Brett Ledbetter. And so those are just good ones that I write about. You can use them with your team, and I have. And so that has been another portion where I kind of expanded doing more writing and self-reflecting and those types of things. And so, yeah, that's just been a way to kind of encompass that. And like I said, it takes 15 to 30 minutes to knock it out. So, and I just feel better when I do.
And you mentioned it something twice now that I think is huge. When we're talking about these daily habits, giving ourselves grace on when we make mistakes and not just throwing in the towel, starting fresh all the time. I'm guilty of that with two things. diet and workouts. I'll eat good for a couple days, and then I'll have one bad meal or something, and I'll just say, all right, give me all the ice cream.
Right.
And it just don't. And my wife's probably laughing if she hears that because like don't go and get all the Raisinets. Just you had something, but then get back on it tomorrow. Or with working out, oh, I missed 5 days. I'm just gonna wait until next week to start over. I think if you miss a day, don't freak out. Just kind of jump back in and then. But I've felt that with habits of maybe trying to start and do too many at one time. And then when I fail or I miss, I scrap them all. And I'm like, I just need to be a little bit more patient and consistent. I thought that was a good nugget.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I'm about that too. About when it comes to taking care of myself, and I try to be a lot more intentional about that this year, just because I know from a physical and a mental standpoint of not taking care of myself, I'm not as good for our kids. Every day at school, I'm not good enough for our assistant coaches and my coaching staff, and then my family at home. And so I've got even my booster club ladies that are part of my booster club. They're always checking in on me and making sure I'm taking care of myself. And this year, I've been trying to do a much better job of that and being a lot more intentional with it. So, yeah, you're exactly right. And I think that's honestly why the springtime is my most fun time of the year because that's when, I don't know, it's the nature of the season. But also just for us in basketball too, it just aligns really well to try to take that next step and be a little bit better on taking care of those
Yeah.
things.
Spring is about growth. Spring is about like new beginnings. And no matter how your season ends, there is always that's a great point, always an excitement to that. Even if you're having fantastic years, there's a part of your mind it's like, okay, well, what would this look like? Like what does the gym feel like this spring? Well, with maybe these great seniors that were graduating and who's coming back. And so I agree with that. Just curious about your spring plan with your guys. How do you balance? Because being up in that Dallas Fort Worth area, select ball is really important and really huge. And what's your spring look like with your workouts with your guys, with the gym, with what they're doing as a team or with on their own, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no, I've heard you talk about it and a lot of different guys. Like we are very, very pro AU, very, very pro playing, and we want our guys playing,
Yeah.
and so we want to help facilitate that. But at the same time, we got to develop and get ready for next season too. So I think it's making sure that we understand like their schedules, how they are going to take care of their bodies during that time because that's something we really dealt with last spring. And so it's making sure we load up in the middle. But then at the, we book in the week with still being intentional with our time, right? Like getting them a lot of shots up on those Fridays before they leave, or even those Thursdays sometimes because they'll miss school. But the beauty for us is we don't start school till 8:45, and we're first period athletics. And so we have access to the
Good
gym.
morning.
Yeah, and so we can get up here and get a good amount of work in and open up the gym for the kids, and have breakfast club, have them come in and design their own workouts. So they're leading them, make the mandatory, strength and conditioning workouts. And so it lends itself to being able to still have a lot of time. And so like we don't there's about a 30-minute difference when we're in season, when our kids show up, and then when we're out of season. Like they're still showing up early, but our late start time allows us to still be able to put the work in year round. And so our number one thing is skill in the spring. Like we are trying to build a level of skill and that's going to fit our style of play. And, obviously we try to play with pace and space and we shoot a lot of threes and that's been consistent over the last 3 years and no matter what the team or what we've looked like. And so we're trying to build that in them and get a ton of shots up. And I think also evaluating us, I think that's something we did in the spring a lot is evaluate our actual practices. Like look at, our drills that we're doing. Like, is this drill, like, what are we getting out of it? Or one of the big things I did last year was have one of my managers count, one of our best players, like, all right, all I want you to do is count how many shots he takes today. Because as coaches, we can just get in and think, oh, we're getting a lot of shots up. And that might be true on the total amount of shots. But if I turn around and look and one of our players took 35 shots and that was it, and it was on air, like we really didn't get anything out of that. He didn't get anything out of that. And
Yeah.
so, as coaches, we can get trapped in the whole group and seeing everything. But when we drill down to it, like how many shots are we getting up for our guys? And so we want to make sure that their skill level is always being tested. They're being problem solvers, both offensively and defensively. And then just making sure that, we're building, the necessary skills for how we're going to play that next year. And I think one of the things we try to do in the spring is start to tinker a little bit and see, what what are we going to do? How are we going to look different? And so, like last spring, for example, we were going to make the shift of being a 4 out, 1 in, drive type of team to what I know you've talked about and putting that guy out in the stretch. And yeah, truly going 5 out.
Just like
But yeah,
that.
yeah, the non-traditional alignment. And so, year one for us, it was year one. A lot of people don't know, but our campus actually opened a year early because they got ahead on the construction.
Wow, that's
So
rare. Yeah.
yeah, it is. And so we needed it over at Prosper I, where I was the varsity assistant. We needed to open a new campus. And so it was crazy opening this thing. And the X's and O's side of things was so not priority. But I hired an assistant, Ian Spate. He was coming over from Hebron, and he was at Oklahoma Wesleyan and played, with a lot of pace and space, and did that at Hebron. And he was there for their long playoff run over there with Coach Ryle and Coach Crawford. And so we put out 4 out, 1 in, and it was great to us. It wasn't. We didn't get real elaborate with it. I'll be honest with you. In year one, and then year two, we had a lot of guys returning. We kind of layered in some Zoom actions, and because we needed a little bit more help of creating. And then we made the shift of we were going to go truly 5 out because of our personnel dictated. We didn't have that true big man. We didn't have a guy that was going to be a lob threat or a rim runner like we had in year one and year two. And so we married ourselves to it. And, I think we did a good job of looking at the structure of how we wanted to play in it and then just tinkering with it and just trying to play as many small sided games to teach it. Teach the spacing and teach the pace that comes with it. And then basically just said, we're going to try to build towards summer league. And once summer league hits, we're going to throw it up against the wall and see what it looks like. It didn't look bad. And then, we had TABC, and that's kind of the cherry on top of. I look at the summer and the spring as one entity. It's just we go the month of June, and we do TABC, and then after we do TABC, we give them the month of July and say, do your
Right.
vacations, do your AAU, and help facilitate that. And so, our spring is just built on kind of tinkering with those things. Next year, we're going to be a lot bigger. We're going to be making the move to 6A, but I also think that we're going to be able to still play with pace and space because we're still going to have guys that are going to be able to shoot it. And
Yeah.
so, really, trying to get guys to buy into playing off of 2 feet, really get into more of teaching truly technique and the idea of getting to the Brunson or the Barkley, as people call it, and just giving those skills. And I think we're going to play a little bit more out of ball screens. And so that's a spring for us, is just making sure that we're, tinkering with those things. But the number one thing is skill development, and it lends itself to them and what they're trying to do in AAU and help grow themselves as an individual.
That goes back to how what one thing you said or we talked about earlier with the relationship between AAU and school ball. I always felt like, and I was guilty of this at Name and Forest at McKinney, where all winter we're talking about school, 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 and how we have to, break the bad habits from select ball that you've learned and reteach everything. And that's a negative way to talk about it. Or we would say, hey, yeah, like school ball's done. Hey, need you to play select ball. But then we would end up like taking all their time up with school ball again. And so if we want them to play select because it's good to play against people from around, if you want to play college basketball, it's still a great way at certain tournaments at certain times of the year, and probably now as seniors, to get noticed and to have another voice, have another style of play, be more well-rounded as a player, all good. Because as much as you and I love the way that we play, there are other ways to do it and that can be effective. But I think without realizing it, we can start to monopolize their time in the spring and summer. So I love the idea of this month here. Like I think this spring, April is going to be us where even in our skill work, it's geared more towards our flow and our spacing. March and May are going to be a lot more of ball in your hand, accountability drills with med balls and cones and getting them lower, more dynamic, outside the box, kind of try to, make them think a lot, but a lot more of that and just shooting with shooting games. And then June being another one where you said like select kind of dies down. Guys, this is where we're going to ramp up really hard again. But I like the way you said, even in your skill work, let's train them in a way that they just become better basketball players to where we can send them or have a relationship with their select coach and saying, listen, I'm not teaching them anything right now that is going to hurt you. This is
Right.
only going to make them whatever you're running, coach, flex, whatever, more dynamic, a better player for you. And I think that's where we get our parents, our players thinking, golly, it's us together. It's not, well,
Right.
my school coach wants this, but my select coach wants this. I just don't think we want to create that hostile environment.
Yeah, no, and you're exactly right. Like if we're doing a good job, they're gonna benefit from it. But at the same time, like there's really good AAU programs. There's really good coaches in AAU. There
Yeah.
absolutely is.
Yeah.
And our parents are we're an affluent community, and they've got the money to spend, but they're going to spend it wisely too. And so they're going to be very selective about what the situation that they put their kids in. And so we've benefited from that. Like we've benefited from our kids playing and the skill development and all those things. And like that's been one thing for us, and we did a better job of it actually after our first year in that first spring, which was, hey, you guys come in, and we get a group of them, and they'd come in during our advisory time, and they would design the next morning's workout that we call Breakfast Club. And then like we're still in those drills, like because they're going with their trainer that they have, or with their
Yeah.
skills coach from AAU, or their AAU coach just teaching them in a practice certain stuff. And so we're learning from those things as well, and saying, oh, I like that, like that's still that, like that's good. And our kids are just, they're so experienced because they have a ball in their hands so early on. Like they know good drills and
Yeah.
good ways and techniques. And so yeah, I think that's, if we can partner with those AAU programs, and we can see it, like we watch Baller TV, and so we have our kids, whether we can go watch them or not, like we're constantly in the office trying to watch our kids, the games that they played over that past weekend. And so we see it, and it allows us to be like, hey, like, I saw you do this in this game, or whatever it is. And, having those conversations with those kids, like you might be surprised sometimes, like that big guy, you might always think he wants to step out and shoot threes and do all that, but you get in some of those conversations with him, he might be like, "Hey, coach, I want to get better inside, and I want to be better at finishing at the rim, and work on my post moves." And we had a kid actually. He's a sophomore for us. He's going to be a big player for us next year. He said like the reason why he loved his AAU program is because he felt so much more confident playing inside, and it showed in the way he played for us this year. He can shoot it, he can handle it, but the kid has grown a ton, and he was getting trained in a lot of different ways with us and with his AAU coach while he grew like 4 inches in a short amount of time. And if he didn't have that, he would be awkward. He would not be the player that he is, and not be ready for the jump that he's about to make for us at the varsity level next year. So,
Well, that's an interesting kind of little nugget there or story about, players that go through a growth spurt, but it really affects their handle. It really affects their shot. They just look uncoordinated. I always wonder, are they not training enough? Because I feel like I was a product of this. I was about 5 my freshman year in high school, and I think I grew 5 or 6 inches over the summer, came back
mhm,
looking completely like a different person, but didn't miss, maybe I was naturally slow, but didn't miss a step in skill and things because like you said, always a ball in my hand, always at the gym,
mhm,
always working out, always playing. And
yep,
so that's kind of an interesting thing of, can you work through some of those growth spurts and things? I absolutely think you can. I think sometimes though he grew a lot, he's adjusting to his body, maybe, or does he need to be in the gym a little bit more? There's a
right.
possibility there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's the thing, is we give them that, like the gym's open. Like we tell them like they're going to be able to get that every single day with us, and we want them to, the best part of their day goes back to the relationship we're trying to build with the parents through the kid, is we want the best part of their day to be basketball, and we get them in the mornings, and
Yeah.
it can be a grind, but like we want that to be fun. And the spring is the most fun time, because the fall is very similar, but the season's looming, right? And the questions about the season, and then we start getting more inward about like, what's my role going to be, my playing time, all those things. The
Yeah.
spring is just like, man, that's so far away right now. It's just about growth and getting better, and that's why I love it. Like I love the spring so much, and we're locked into the end of our season right now. But when I think about the spring, I get really excited about it. So
It's one thing that when I like to ask coaches, what's one thing that makes their program different? And Coach Long at Denton Geyer had a great point. He said, our gym is always open. And I said, okay, what do you mean by that? He's like, after school, it's open till 9. And I'm like, Coach, how do you do that? I mean, I got to go home at some point. Like, I don't think my wife would appreciate that. But
yeah.
it's the idea of using assistant coaches. Like
Yeah.
one of them is kind of always up there in case.
Hmm.
And that's, uh, we talk about building culture. You
Hmm.
started a school. I'm just starting out at one, and everybody's culture is going to be a little bit different or the way they want to show up. But I think we would all say we want guys that love to be in the gym, that are begging us to be in the gym. But then you got to ask yourself, okay, what's the opportunity like? When can they do it? Is it only at 6 a.m.? Is it only during athletic period? Is it only for 30 minutes after school? So you hear a guy like that, those guys at Geyer, and then you kind of see their track record of success. Yeah, they've had great players, but they're also giving those great players opportunity. And so maybe we sacrifice, maybe we divvy up our times, but I'm on a mission this spring at Midway to, one, make the gym the place to be. Love being here. Couldn't imagine being anywhere else. But also that thing is always open, and we got the guns out. We got our 10,000 shot challenge that people are just tearing through because they're shooting so much. I mean, but I have to give up my springtime, which it is nice to go home sometimes right after school. And it is nice to just, Wednesday night, it's Survivor night. Coach, we got Survivor 50 coming up. Like, I can't wait for that. So if we're going to be up there till 9, I'm definitely not doing it on Wednesdays, but that's just something I've been thinking about.
Yeah, no, and I'll be honest, it's tough for us because we go till 4:15. I do not live close. I have a commute, and so that makes it hard as well. I got my staff is a younger staff, which is crazy to say because I'm now getting to that age where I'm the older guy, and that was just not the way I came up when I was at Prosper
It's
High.
really
I was always
weird.
the young
It's
guy.
really weird. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the cultural differences. I make references in the office and they don't get them. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. But, yeah, so the good, again, we're blessed with a later start time. And so, our kids are great. Like, I got Coach Spade over from Hebron, and we went through, and like our kids were showing up. You're starting a brand new program. Like, of course, everybody's going to be excited. It's something brand new and everything. And I'm getting to know the other kids and that I didn't have at Prosper High with me. And we got going, and then we kind of got halfway through the summer of our skill stuff, and he was just like, Coach, is this normal? And I was like, what do you mean? And it was the kids were shooting around. He's like, our kids never miss. Like, our kids are always here. He's like, is this just because we're starting this brand new school? And I was like, no, man, like, this has always been the case here. Like, I like our kids. Like, we got really good kids in general in Prosper. We got really good kids here at Walnut Grove, and they're driven and they work hard. And there's a high expectation that comes with that from them, from their parents and everything else. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, we try to open it up, and I think it's about being intentional with your time as well. And I think that's one thing I want to get better at is talking to them and just being like, hey, what do y'all want to do? Like for today, like, what do y'all think we need to work on? And hearing that feedback instead of it just being spoon fed to them constantly, because I think that, to your point of trying to get them in the gym and love being there, if it's always driven by us, it doesn't create that ownership from them. And so I think that's definitely one thing I want to do a better job of, is being like, hey, what are you guys thinking? And so I think there's ways that you can do that through leadership opportunities, honestly, of just putting guys in leadership opportunities, putting guys underneath them in teams, and then having those teams come in and just constantly putting it on different guys. Like I said, I love the spring, and so I've been thinking about it. But really, that snowstorm, the ice storm that just hit, there was only so much TV I could watch, and so I started having some of those thoughts while we were just laid up, and I started thinking about the spring a lot.
There's only so many times you can go through all the Marvel movies in chronological order. And let's just be honest, you just don't even need to watch after Endgame, because until
Yeah,
Thunderbolts, they were all misses, in my opinion.
I've got high hopes for Doomsday. I am a Marvel nut, and so I'm hoping. We talk about it a lot in the training room with our team. Like, there's a couple guys that are really into it, like I am, and I'm like, hey, like I think we might get back on track here. Like, and I'm not necessarily a comic book reader of the Marvel type. I was really into the DC actual comic books, but the Marvel movies are so much better. I do know pretty good history about it, and so I know Doomsday and Secret Wars is going to be the reset that we might need. So I'm excited.
Wow, man, I think you're on another level. I just love the movies. I never watched or read the cartoons or anything growing up, but I definitely love them. Excited. Hopefully, the direction is kind of getting back where we want. Because I thought Fantastic Four, the storyline was great, the acting was great. Needed more fighting in it, to be honest. I thought there's really only 2 or 3 fight scenes for such a long movie, but still good. Coaches, the JAMODI Podcast is powered by Grip Spritz. Grip Spritz makes the annoying parts of coaching easy. Stop peeling off sticky sheets every time a player subs in. Grip Spritz provides game-long grip with no in-game maintenance at half the cost of a traditional sticky pad. The Grip Spritz Court Mop ensures your court is clean, safe, and ready to play on instantly. Weighing less than 10 pounds, anyone on your team or staff can clean the entire court in under 10 minutes. JAMODI Podcast listeners save 10% with code JAMODI at gripspritz.com. Let's flip it around a little bit.
Yeah.
Standards and pillars are, that's really the way I like to think of culture. I just don't even like to use the word, but it is what it is. It's a buzzword. It's out there, but the standards and pillars of our program, super important, because even at your time at Walnut Grove, you've had players that have moved on, but you remain. And so some of those standards and pillars are you and in what you're building. So what do you like to have in your program?
Yeah, our thing, our hashtag, our brand, whatever you want to call it, our culture is centered on toughness, discipline, and grit. So you see TDG everywhere in our building, social media and all those things. And the one thing that's funny about it is you're not really going to hear the words toughness, discipline, or grit a whole lot when you actually come to our practices. And it's because of the way we define it. And so it very simply, toughness is, we tell our kids, is the ability to hear and tell the truth. Discipline is finding the details and taking care of them regardless of the circumstance or your comfort level. And grit is, about being a man and fulfilling all your responsibilities, again, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of what you got going on. And so that kind of dictates how we talk about everything. And you mentioned, as the head coach, you're holding up those things no matter what. That's what I did. In examining how I wanted to start a program, kind of going down this rabbit hole of, you probably experienced it too, when we get that interview that you're going to go for, and you've been preparing for your first job. You've been preparing, you've been putting together your packet, you've been putting together that binder, you've been getting all those things, those little nuggets, and writing them all down. But when it's time to actually say, this is what we're going to be, it's very daunting because you got a lot of information if you've been doing your homework. And so I just kind of started with, I think every program is a reflection of their coach. And so I really had to look at, like, who am I? I'm not smart enough or emotionally in tune with myself enough to just answer those questions. I wanted to get it from people I trusted. And so I went through this process after I found out that Walnut Grove was going to open. And I kind of went on a search for characteristics that I felt like were very important to me. But just because they're important to me doesn't mean that they're actually, like, I exude them or I showcase those every single day. And so, like I said, I'm pretty good about reading, and I like physical copies of books as much as possible, even though I'm an audiobook guy too, because I like to make notes. And so I went through, like, the top 10 most influential books. I pulled characteristics. I spent a whole weekend doing this, but I came up with this Google form, and it had 13 characteristics that I found throughout those books that I would highlight, or I would write something down. And I kind of just made these buckets and came up with 13 of them and put them on a Google form. And I sent them out to the people that I had been working with for a long period of time. I coached football for a while coming up. And so Brandon Schmidt was my head football coach, and he was a huge mentor for me. Learned a ton about building a program. Prosper ISD football is a powerhouse up here, and he was the one that helped build that. He's moved on to A&M Consolidated, but he was huge in that. And so sent it to people like him. Obviously sent it to guys like Jonathan Ellis, but also people that were other assistant coaches that worked with me, and said, hey, these are 13 things on a daily basis, year in and year out. Like, which ones describe me? And so I got it back, and toughness, discipline, and grit are the ones that were at the top of the list. And so then I started having conversations with those people and kind of like, why did you choose this? And I go back to Brandon Schmidt with toughness. He was just like, Jake, you do a really good job of telling our kids the truth. You're honest with them, but also I know that you are always coming in my office and asking me what you need to do better, and you want to know the truth. You don't want to just be told you're doing a good job. And so that was, kind of outlined toughness for me. You talked to Coach Ellis, and he was like, you are really disciplined in your work ethic. No stone goes unturned. You try to do a good job in everything that you do. And then with grit, it was just conversations with multiple people, but I go back to my parents, just who they are and how they raised me and their responsibilities as parents, and all the things. Then I also, working up to becoming a head coach, everything I tried to take on because I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And so that's what it is. So if we ever get to a point where we're not exuding those things, it's on me. right? Like at the end of the day, it takes extreme ownership to say that if our team's not disciplined, that's on me as a coach. If our kids are not having grit, that's on me as a coach. And if I constantly tell them the truth, that's one thing, but they got to be able to hear it too. And I think that's a
Yeah.
tough thing to teach kids is that ability to hear the truth and take it and then move on. And so that's what we're built on, and that's what we're constantly talking to our kids about.
Man, so many good things there. I thought, what a great activity, and whether you have a list of 13 words or not, but to ask other coaches which one of these characteristics really show me or who show who I am, describe who I am. I was just thinking about like what would the list look like, or if you just ask coaches kind of open ended, even
Yeah.
what words, a couple jokes came to my mind, but like scatterbrained, insane for still shooting threes after missing so much, non-committal defensively, like all these things. But no, I think that's such a great. I wonder if you could kind of gear that even towards your players. Going back to one of the kind of what you said, like you have a list of words, and even ask your players, like ask for 3 or 4 people in your life, like which one of these words really work for you and show who you are every day. I think that activity in some way is something that we all need to do, whether we're trying to build a culture or not. And then I like the idea of too, where you said it had to be something personal to you because there's a
Mhm.
ton of great acronyms. There's a ton of great sayings and words and stuff, but maybe it works for Nate Oates at Alabama, maybe not for you or me. And
Right.
this is one thing I did years ago at Faith because I was the acronym guy that I'd find a new one. Oh, hey, this is us this year. And then didn't care if our players really knew it or cared about it at all. And then I asked my assistants, I said, let's just write down all of the words or all of the things that we do use and say, or ways that we want to show up every day, things we want to be known for as a program. We had, lists and pages of through stuff. And then it was, okay, now let's start to narrow it down to get in groups. Okay, which ones kind of go together? All right, good. Now we got those groups. All right, seems like there's 4 or 5 groups here. Now, which one really stands? And that's where we kind of got to our 4. And then with the idea that my players get to choose the 5th every year, that Coach K
Right.
five-fingered approach, because it needs to be personal to us, but they, I feel like, need to have some input and buy-in too. But no matter what, it does have to be lived out, And I do want to be transparent here. I went into our JV locker room last week. I had to randomly go in there, and it was a mess, mounds and mounds of clothes. And I went and bought, so they had the locks that were just kind of hook on and you had
Yeah.
the dial. I went and bought from our booster club and stuff, permanent ones that are on the door. All you have to do is
Mhm.
shut it and it locks, and doors were open. I brought JV Red up and I said, guys, tell me what word of our culture this is not living up to right now. Silence.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
tell me one of our 4 words. Silence.
Yep.
And I just kind of put my head up. I was like, "Oh, man," like, it happened. It happened where we have these words, but we're not living them out. We're not
Yeah.
talking about them. They're not even it's not even they're not even recognizing it. We may
Right.
say go hard every day, but no, like, it's all about being excellent with what you do, doing
Right.
your very, very best in small things. And so, yeah, we had to talk about it, and then we had to do towel pushes for the stuff out, and then we had to talk about, okay, let's keep it clean. Now, what's our first standard? Excellence. What does that mean? Very best. Like, but coach, without realizing it, man, they just became words on a board
Right.
and not something we're living out 100%. And so it's up to us to keep it alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And not like in the fall time, in the fall off season, like that's how we start our year after tryouts and everything was kind of relisting those things. When we start our
Yeah.
season, I try to talk about them again. And I've already thought about it for this spring of being like, okay, define toughness for me, define discipline, define grit. And I know like I'm not going to be happy with what I see because even like I just said, like we don't say those words necessarily, but those topics and those things that we talk about with telling each other the truth and being able to hear the truth and all the different characteristics that come with it is definitely something, a message that they hear. But I think we do have to be intentional with that, and that's definitely an exercise that I want to do in the spring is trying to examine that, like how much are we really driving home our culture, right? Because if we're going to say culture is the thing that matters the most, if they can tell me more about our offense than they can tell us about our culture, then like we're missing the mark. Like we've like, because we all as coaches always want to say it's not about the basketball, it's about the connection, it's about the culture. And so that's definitely something I want to examine and making sure that like we're doing a good job of, because like you said, like, the kid goes through our program for 4 years, like, and they can leave without being able to define toughness, discipline, and grit. That's on me. That's on nobody else. So
Yeah. And holding the line, fighting for those standards every day. But what a great point that you made, that sometimes I think our culture can enhance the basketball. Like, I think if we want to be excellent, have humility, bring enthusiasm and be tough, that's our four. Well, I think playing fast, we will play better with those four. But man, how quickly can the only thing that you talk about be the basketball piece? Or I think right now, if I was to ask them to list what are our offensive concepts when leather touches our fingertips, I think they could do that. And because even before our last game, I just went around the circle or the team and I just asked them each to say something. What's an offensive concept, an idea that how we want to play? And they were rattling them off. And I was really pleased. What if I would have done that? Like, hey, tell me how does humility show up in our program? Like, what are different ways we talked about? Man, I think we can't let those scales tip too far. And
yeah,
because I think it's the healthy balance, right? Not all culture and no X's and O's, because then you'll be a hype team that can't do anything on the floor, but not
yeah,
all X's and O's to where they're not growing as people. We want consistent players. We have to have consistent people. And how do those people grow? Man, it's the other stuff along with the basketball, in my opinion. Going from what Wes Watson said, I'd love to learn a little bit about your favorite style of play to teach. He said you're super hard to prepare for, run really good stuff. So what do you like to do?
yeah. I mean, we're like every coach that gets a brand new job, especially in the college ranks, they want to say they play fast and all those things and
And
get
they
up
have
and
a great
down and
culture. Oh, yeah.
yeah, and have a great culture. Yeah, check all those boxes. We knew coming in here when we started the program, and I knew the kids that I was inheriting from Prosper High that I had coached, and I was the varsity assistant for, and then the guys I was getting from Rock Hill High School, we were going to be able to shoot it well, and so obviously wanted to play fast. That went into my hiring process with my varsity assistant and Coach Spate, and so like I said, we have changed and we've adapted a little bit for what that looks like, but we're going to play with pace and try to get guys in space as much as possible. But, this last year, 5 out, dribble drive and trying to keep it very simple at the same time, and just really hone in on our spacing and the skill work that comes with that, and giving them the freedom to shoot the basketball, which is tough. Shot selection is one of the most unique things in all of sports. It's one of the most personal things. It is the one thing that can tear apart your team if you're not constantly talking about it and putting in the work that it requires and the responsibility that comes with shot selection. Like I said, we play fast, we shoot a ton. I will say that we sometimes sacrifice a little bit of our pace to get guys in the right spots or the right formations. Is like I like to say, we get a stop and we're pushing in transition. There's no spot you're running to. We're trying to get it and go, and we're trying to fill those spots, and that's what we worked a lot of last spring. In the non-traditional 5 out, a guy in that flex and getting a guy out of the dunker. But for us, off of a make or a dead ball situation, we are certain guys in certain spots, and so I wouldn't say that we're completely positionless, but they're all 5 guys trying to play through the pass or trying to get up a shot and trying to go create and trying to recognize advantages, right? Which is, again, goes into the same umbrella as shot selection, right? And training that in them. And so, in year 2, we had everybody coming back from year 1 for the most part. We graduated 2 seniors, one guy that went on to play at the next level. But we felt really good about the team that we were going to have. And Coach Spade and I constantly were talking about this might be the best shooting team we ever coach, like, because we could absolutely shoot it. And so we had a great year. We went 28-10, lost in the second round to a phenomenal Frisco Heritage team. And then we lost 7 seniors and a ton of shooting that came with them. And so we went into this dribble drive concept because we felt like every single guy that we could put on the floor was going to be able to play on the perimeter and get to the rim, create their own shot, play with advantage. and push the floor, be their own outlet, all those different things. And we didn't have a traditional big. And so we started working on it, and lo and behold, we are far better shooting the basketball than we were the other 2 years. And,
Wow.
we're on synergy, and not every single team across the state is on synergy. But you can recognize the good programs that are and that you're in a company with. And if you basically go to all the different categories, we're in the top three and have been throughout the entire year in the state. Points per possession, points per shot, free throw percentage as far as like getting to the actual line or possessions that end in a free
Mm.
throw, catch and shoot opportunities, catch and shoot percentages, all those different things. And so, a testament to our kids and the work that they put in, but then also for us as a staff of really diving into it, coaching up the skill that is required to be able to
Yeah.
play at that pace and that style. And so, no one ever wants to play slow, but we definitely bought into it. And, it's funny, man, because I'll have a ton of coaches that'll just say, like, you guys do a great job of sharing the basketball. And, refs will even say it to you sometimes, like, you guys just always make the extra pass. You guys shoot it with such confidence. But at the same time, like, you deal with, internal stuff with your kids when you got everybody out there that can shoot it really well. Then, sometimes guys feel like, they're getting passed up for shots. And so something you're constantly having to deal with and making sure that those connections within your team are there to be able to have that free flowing mindset offensively. And so it's been super fun. I mean, every year is a little bit different, but playing fast and having the freedom to shoot it and, get to the rim and making sure we're teaching kids to recognize advantage is never going to change no matter what team I have.
A lot of synergy
Yeah.
between, the way you think and the way I think. I am looking into getting us on it because there's been so many coaches. The Coppell coach, his episode is out this week, and he talked a lot about that. And kind of, my son has a login and everything with his school, and he plays at Trinity University, so I'm gonna check that out a little bit. But I have always loved. I don't think Max Preps does the team threes anymore. Do they still do that? I know they do individual, but I don't think they
I
do the
don't.
team. If you go through their filter and stuff, but I used to always love to see kind of like a game within the game for us. This was more at Faith, but I think we can do this at Midway because, Coach, we shot with courage this year. I really appreciate that. Getting into that 30 to 40 attempts a game. And without a lot of makes, they kept firing it. And so there's got to be something there, right? If we can train, if we can get more and more of those makes, at least they're willing to take them.
Right.
But when you say shoot a ton, yeah, what are you talking about in games? Obviously it's different from game to game, but do you have
Yeah.
a range of threes that kind of show we're getting this because our pace and flow is good?
No, like, we're in that 30 to 40 range as well. We're not getting much above the 40 range, but we will.
Yeah.
And I've had, a countless amount of games where we have made far more threes than we've made twos. But then we go back and we look at the shot selection of it and we're doing a good job. And I think we're
Yeah.
also kind of married our defense with our offense. We're not very big. But we could do a much better job at taking charges because we don't have a rim protector. But one of the things that Synergy has also told us is that we do a good job of running guys off the line. At one point, we were number one in the state on 3-point percentage when it came to the defensive end. And so it just
Wow.
comes down to the math of it. If we're taking threes and making them, and we're running you off the line, and you're not, then that math is in our favor. But we've also won some games with not shooting the ball well. But I think this year, and playing this style, that's another thing I want to look at in the spring is just kind of what those metrics were of where those lines were that we kind of fell into in those ranges of, all right, well, we
Yeah.
knew it. These ranges, we felt really good about it, or we were very successful. And you know how it is, like district play comes and it's just a different animal. You're not going to be getting, those same looks all the time. And you're going to get different guys that are going to guard you in different ways. And I think the one thing that we've tried to do a good job of, we were very set heavy in the first 2 years and more so now of being, we'll run stuff. Like we are not opposed to sets, but it's more of the idea that we're going to run a set as a quick hitter, and then all roads are going to lead to us getting to our spacing and getting downhill and creating that double gap. And that's the one thing I think we've done a better job of, because before it was, hey, let's get this quick hitter or this set. And if we don't get it, then it's like, all right, let's take the time to go ahead and get back into offense. And now we just flow a whole lot more. And so I think that's one thing I do want to look at is the analytics that we get from it. And I don't ever actually look at synergy because we have huddle as well. But my
Yeah.
assistant, Coach Ladd that I mentioned earlier, he is always combing through it and looking at it and looking at analytics and looking at the different lineups and rotations and just little tweaks that we can make through the data that we get through it. Really, I know I put on there, analytics, but that's what this gets into is just sometimes that stuff can
Sure.
just tell us what we already know, or it could tell us something that we are absolutely missing and then answer questions for us that maybe we're assuming and just say, hey, am I right about this? Or are we actually good at running guys off the line? Or are we actually good at, our shot quality, whatever it is, or we have a guy that, we think he takes good shots, but is he actually taking good shots? And so
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's what we really get from synergy itself, but in general, just looking at the data that we get over time.
No, I think ways to use those analytics, so those areas that we're really tracking to give clarity to ourselves as coaches or our players of like Matt Garnett always talks to a route to victory. There's a certain route to victory for every game for each team. And maybe you coach a style where we can morph and change regardless of or we can morph and change to our opponents and we can play a different style, different types of games. I'm a little bit more of it's more about us than them in that mentality of here's our route to victory overall consistently. And here are a few things like we want to get more threes than them. We want to get more total shots than them. We want to have more offensive rebounds. We want to have fewer turnovers. We want to hopefully get to the line more than them. But like what I think what this helps is not just for us as coaches, but as players, I think they want to know that they're attempting to do or close to doing what we're asking them to do. And just sometimes vague talk like, "Hey guys, man, I thought you played really well last night." Well, that sounds nice. What do you mean by that, coach? Or we lost. Well, how can you say that? Well, let's just look at the things that we really are focusing on. Guys, they took 17 threes. We took 33. Love that. Like now, don't worry about how many we made, but you took them. Guys, we shot 69 shots. They shot 43. That's great. We're getting more offensive rebounds. We're turning them over. We're winning that battle. And I think especially now if you're winning these games, I feel like it's just adds fuel to the fire of what you're doing. But even if you're not, you can continue to talk about the good or pinpoint those areas instead of golly, we just got to get better. We got to get better. Okay, I agree with that. In what way? And is it all the areas or are there some that, man, you're right on the money, fellas. You're really close. And so that's where I like to get better, like you said. And huddle is good, but I can't figure out a way. I really don't like flipping now in huddle. It is to me, it's
Yeah.
become a beating to do it. I
Yeah.
can make a clip, but then using their filters and things, I wish it would go back. Like if I could talk to
Yeah.
the huddle guy right now, I'd say, take this update and throw it out. Go back to
Yeah.
the way it was. But
Right.
synergy seems like a way to where you can get super specific with
Mhm.
what you're talking. Like, how cool would it be with our styles of play if we had these 5 things? It goes back to a little bit of Grinnell for me. Grinnell had
Right.
what I love
Mhm.
about that system, it had their 5 areas that they said if they get all 5 of these, they win 100% of
Right.
the time, 4 of them. And I like, maybe this is more on the offensive end too, but I like being able to share that with the guys.
Yeah. No, I think like when you give those things to them, it's definitely tangible. But that's something we've talked about our kids. Like, guys, can we shoot the basketball? Yes. Okay. Like we can all establish that. Like you guys put a ton of work in to be able to do that. But I think that goes back to the shot selection side of things. Is like we also I tell them like, guys, we're not hitting right now, but also we got to remember how we're getting them. And so like I just
It's a good point.
our percentages on the plus ones that we get, like we shoot it so much better. And so if we, I'm not opposed to we drive a double gap. He steps down out of we just say the drift. We don't say the corners, but he steps down out of the drift and we fire it and you're open. You're in that spot for a reason. If you're starting out a possession down in the drifts for us, that means that we believe in you as a shooter. You need to take that. But if they're not firing, they're not falling, and we need to kind of change what we're doing. We're not saying don't shoot them. We're saying we got to get to them better because everything that we do from a shooting standpoint is usually off of a +1 anyways. And so we work on kickouts and things like that, but we just shoot it with more confidence and just leaning into that. And so when you're able to give them those data points, or when you're able to say, like, if we're getting down about our shot selection or we're not happy with each other, like, I don't feel like I'm getting enough shots. Like, I did it this year. I put up the synergy stats and showed it we're top 3 in every single category. Guys, we didn't get to that offensive efficiency by all of us being selfish or taking bad shots. Like, you can't do that. Like, you
Yeah.
can't do it in our
Yeah.
district. It's so tough. You can't do it in the schedule that I put in front of you. Like, there's no way for us to have inefficiency or selfishness and all those things if we're at this output. And, like, there's no way things can't be
Yeah.
true. And again, synergy is not perfect when you're comparing to other programs because not every single team in the state's on there. But
But you can use
there's
it. Yeah.
quality programs that are, and you're just like, these are good
Yeah.
company to be in, and no matter who it is, at least we're at the top.
It's the same thing with when Max Preps was doing the made threes in a year. Regardless of what wins and losses were looking like, we could always look at that bad. Guys, remember, nationwide, we're a top 10 3-point shooting team. They don't know. The kids didn't know that not every team put their stuff in max preps,
Right.
the same way that not everybody uses synergy. But
Right.
there's just ways to use that data. Maybe you feel like I don't believe in shooting slumps, but they're just a little bit down about how they shot or off what they did off whatever. You can use those things to maybe artificially create more belief or create more confidence. And then it'll become real again from when they play the way that they train. But man, I love doing those things. And it goes a little bit into film too. You're talking about we are playing like this, or we didn't. Guys, we're not a selfish team. And how I know is because of how these metrics show up in synergy. You're not selfish if you're showing up here. You can use film that way too, because you could, with selection, you could just clip up 3 or 4 horrible shots that your team takes and say, this is why we're losing. Look at these shots that we're taking. I don't think that necessarily changes it much. It pisses off 3 or 4 guys that you're showing,
Yep.
and it puts everybody else at odds with those guys that are maybe already feeling it. So flip it, and you pick the 3 or 4 clips where it was click, click, boom. We found the domino, and we kept that thing moving, kept transferring until one person could cash in. And you put those up and you say, this is what makes us special. This is why you guys are hard to play. And you just keep speaking into that side. And I think I did that more this year than ever before, but I believe that it'll pay off.
Oh, absolutely. I think the film, like you said, the aspect of it, we try to do that in district. Now that we're in the second round of district, is just go find those great shots that we took in the first game, right? Let's build on this,
Yeah.
whether we won that game or we lost that game. What are those good ones? How were we successful? And what do we got to get better at? You already know. We can just talk about it. I don't got to show you on film what we failed at. We talked about it after the game. We moved on. So build on that success. And so, yeah, I think films are just another way that you can do it. Absolutely.
Before I get you out of here, I want to do the
Yes, sir.
speed round with you. And for somebody that has watched some episodes or listened, hopefully this is kind of fun for you to get to
Yeah.
be a part of here. You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. Favorite ice cream flavor?
A chocolate chip cookie dough.
Good one.
Just pretty
Good one.
simple.
Great. Yeah. Greatest shooter of all time.
I got to go with Steph. And, you can make a lot of arguments why, but like for me, the special thing about him is being able to do it at different arm slots and platforms of his feet, and then just the difficulty of the shots that he's been able to take, like that's the impressive thing that he's been able to do, coming off ball screens, catch and shoot, just every way that he's been able to do it. Playing with a guy like Klay Thompson is special as well. But, Klay is just that type of kid that you have in the gym that is always special, or that shot is exactly the same every single time. Yeah. And that's what was cool about seeing those guys play together. Is Steph was the opposite of that. Like, cause he can just, any way he can get that thing off, but the end result was usually going down.
I think we're all trying to train Klay Thompsons. Like that's what we're trying to create. The guys that can do it the same way. I think another questioner could be like, could you create a Steph, or could you create guys like him? Not obviously not to the level of either of these guys, unless if that's the case, we're going to be pretty darn good. But which guys in the gym, like, do you actually want your players to emulate, and can you create either of them?
Yeah, I think that goes to, well, I think that's the thing is you got to get real specific with your training, I think, and you got to break guys up in your skills training, because I think there are some guys that you can make into a good to great shooter, but they need to be that all right, this form every single time, whatever. And if you can't get to that, then you're probably not going to be able to get that shot off. But we're training you to get to the rim and play through a pass and play with advantage. But then I think there are those guys that have that ability to work off of different platforms with their feet and different arm angles or finishing and side steps and all those different things. I think you just got to identify that. But at the end of the day, it's all going towards the same end of like, we want you to be a playmaker, we want you to be a shot maker, and we want you to recognize advantage.
Answer. Golly. Do you stand up or sit down more in games?
I stand the entire time. I don't even try to set too much. I like it. Everybody knows when I'm talking to my 3 assistants now, because we added one. I sit down in between them so I can talk about something. But yeah, I'm pacing the sidelines always.
Top 3 dinner guests, any time period, it can be outside of basketball.
Man, I've heard this one asked. Geez, putting me on the spot. I didn't prepare for this one. I think for me, I would want to have different people that would be fun to interact with, but also be able to get their opinions on today. Randomly enough, I would say both my grandfathers. They were both a lot
Nice.
older. Like one of them fought in World War II, and the other one was a little bit younger than him. So to be able to have them come back and ask them questions and about just the world that we live in today and what things were like when they were around and just how things have changed so much. And then, I've always I've always had the thought of Abraham Lincoln when it comes to mind. And so I think that would span enough time period there that it would be an interesting conversation.
Good. Best basketball movie of all time.
I don't really think that there's a bad basketball movie unless there's some that maybe I haven't seen. Obviously, I think the generic answer is Hoosiers, but for me, I grew up. I was a young kid when Space Jam came out, and I'm a huge Space Jam guy. I didn't see the second one. I'm not anti-LeBron. In fact, I kind of lean a little bit more LeBron, but I hate the conversation. I know you might be about to ask that question, but
It's coming. It's coming.
the other one is just a classic. Like it's
Yeah,
awesome
yeah.
in every way. And
Well, it
so
really showed how
definitely
great of
Space
an
Jam.
actor Michael Jordan was compared to LeBron. He
Right.
acts way better. That was for high school, shot clock or no shot clock.
Shot clock, no question about it. The only thing not worry about, but I am intrigued about is the amount of zone or 3/4 court or full court zone, or sorry, like pressing zones and stuff
Yeah.
like that you might see teams lean on a little bit more, and does that have an effect on the skill development? But I think enough states are out there that we'd be able to talk to those coaches pretty quick and find out the answers to all those questions. So
Yeah.
shot clock all day long.
Do players sit the rest of the half with 2 fouls? First half.
No, this year has definitely been the case for me. We've been in that situation a ton. I will pull them, but it's more of just like a reset. But
Yeah.
no, you're going to get back in. But I think every team's different. Every kid's different. I do think if you have a ton of depth and you trust that kid to be able to set and get back into the game and his teammates are going to have his back, you could do that. But as a rule, no, I just don't find that it's productive. And again, we had a game this year where we had bad foul trouble. We were down 10, and my assistants were just like, hey, we got to get him back in. We got to get the starters in. We got to get back into this game. And guess what? He didn't get another foul in the second quarter, and we tied the game going into half. So definitely not setting him the rest of the half.
Good assistance right there for sure. What book would you give someone?
Man, I forget the name of it. Kevin Eastman's book. To me, that is
Why the best are the best.
yes. Like I will pull that out. I think that's my number one book that I will reference. And during COVID, I really dove into that one. And it's the most bookmarked, like literal bookmarks in it and annotations and notes that I have. And I'll reference that one a lot. I think that is a huge one for coaching, for life, for all of it. I think that one's extremely powerful.
Okay. Last one, and you already talked about it, but in basketball as a player, who is the GOAT?
I don't know. I'm younger, so I grew up watching LeBron. I didn't get the luxury. My first memories of watching basketball was with Jordan, with the Bulls, other than him being in Space Jam. And so I hate the conversation, honestly. I really do. I hate the comparing of the two because they're both great. I've always said that if you switch both of them and you take one and just put them in the other one, I think they have very similar careers. LeBron obviously comes with his baggage. I'm sorry. I really don't have an answer for you. I think I think LeBron James is the best player of all time, but the best career absolutely goes to Jordan. And so it depends on how you define your GOAT. But I
Yeah.
don't think that there's a wrong answer. And I've quit arguing with people because I don't even know what I believe in anymore.
Uh, I appreciate that. I don't think there's an answer to it. I think, and I actually probably like the question better of who's your favorite player. Because
Yeah.
favorite player, it's not as there's not. It's your opinion. There's not, even though the GOAT is opinion too. But you get more just of a fun answer of like who'd you like playing, like we're watching. Like for me, I loved Steve Wojciechowski as a college player. He played at Duke, but he slapped the floor. Kind of the
Yeah.
guy that I could see myself being at that level. Or Steve Nash, Pistol Pete.
Yeah.
But I like favorite. Who's your favorite player to watch?
I mean, I always kind of go through different phases of like my top 5 players of who they are, and it's always changing. To your point, favorite college player of all time, actually, my daughter's middle name is Quinn, and this is very random, but Quinn Cook from Duke.
Oh
I
yeah,
just loved watching him about just the most enthusiastic player about his teammates. And I think also in today's time, like he went to Oak Hill. He was a big time recruit coming out, and he did not play his freshman year. And he stayed all 4 years at Duke. He went through that, won a national championship
yeah.
at the end. And I always just had a huge amount of respect for him. And just he was a great playmaker, and he changed his game from the high school player that he was, but just the enthusiasm that he had. But today, I love Jokic, love Luka. Cade Cunningham, I've just been big on him coming out of this area from Arlington, Mount Bird, and then watching him at Oklahoma State, knowing that his game was going to translate to the college, or sorry, from the college level to the NBA level. Like, I don't think enough. Finally, people are catching on to how special he really is. That one's a pretty special one for me these days.
Well, Coach, man, this is incredible. You gave me an hour and 50 minutes of your time. But also thank you so much for giving up your time at this point in the season where you've got a lot of important things going on, a lot of things with your team, but you're still willing to hop on and talk hoops with me. Just really appreciate it, man.
No, I appreciate you, and like I said, love the podcast, and honestly, like right when I was in the thick of listening and just tearing through episodes is right when I started the journey of getting this job, interview for this job, and I'm serious. Like it had a huge impact on me and as a coach and preparing to be a head coach, and continues to be. Like when I'm down about stuff or I just need to escape, but I still want to talk or think about basketball, I'm turning you guys on. So really appreciate you guys.
Thank you. That's such a cool thing to hear and always wonder, is there anybody besides my mom listen? No, she doesn't listen to this, but it's just
Yeah,
cool to hear that it's helping in some way. And I get just as much out of these talks as you do. To me, it's like man, I get to hold somebody captive for an hour 50 and ask questions and learn and write notes and everything. So anything that you and I can do to get back to the game that's been so good to us, let's do it. And man, good luck the rest of this year and
yes, sir.
excited to kind of maybe connect with you at TABC or something coming up in the future. So best of
Yeah.
luck.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Good luck to you guys and your off season and everything else. Anytime. Yeah, would love to connect and pick your brain because I definitely am not the smartest guy. So I'm trying to steal whatever I can from everybody else.
The JAMODI Podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products. Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.